Cowmeadow, principal of the International Macrobiotic School, and I'm going to talk this evening about how to make a vegan diet healthy. I've been following macrobiotic principles and ideas and cooking skills, etc., for over 40 years now. The macrobiotic diet, the macrobiotic kind of principles generally suggest a plant-based diet. Some people choose to make this vegan. Some people may eat small amounts of animal food according to what people perceive as their needs. But there's a lot of experience within macrobiotics of how to make a plant-based diet, which can be mostly mostly plant foods with a little bit of animal food, or a completely plant-based diet. That has a lot of experience in how to make that healthy, how to maintain health, how to heal various health problems with that kind of way of eating. So it's from that kind of background that I want to talk this evening. Also, I give health consultations, and I see quite a lot of people eating a vegan diet, and I see some people who are doing it quite successfully, and I see others that are eating a vegan diet and actually developing a whole range of different health problems. Some people may assume that a vegan diet is healthier than a non-vegan diet. Actually, that's not particularly true. It really depends on the kind of foods and the kind of balance you make in your diet as to whether it's going to be healthy or not. Certainly, vegans tend to get less of certain illnesses, particularly the ones, or including the ones to do or caused by a buildup of animal fats in the body. So generally get less heart disease, less strokes, for example, less gallstones. But they seem to, I see a lot of people eating a vegan diet who get different kinds of health problems, allergies, asthma, hay fever, and digestive problems, low energy problems, and others. So that's why I want to talk about how to make a vegan diet healthy. I really welcome your questions and comments. So I'm intending to talk for maybe 30-40 minutes, give you my ideas. If you've got questions about what I'm actually talking about, then just post them, and if they catch my eye, then I may well answer them. If not, then I'll answer them more towards the end. So I really welcome your questions, because it makes the whole thing much more interesting for me and also for you, I think. So how do we make a vegan diet healthy? We can't assume that just because it's vegan, it's going to be healthier. From a Western medicine or Western nutrition point of view, one of the issues, which you're probably aware of, is that all plant diets tend to be low in vitamin B12. This is a vitamin which we do get from eating animal foods. It's a vitamin which the body stores for a long time. So if you go on an all-plant diet and you're not eating enough vitamin B12, it can take months or years for the symptoms to start showing up, especially kind of tiredness, difficulty to concentrate, and can be really quite dangerous because B12 is important for the development of the nervous system. So if you're raising children on a vegan diet, really important that you make sure that they have an adequate source of B12, which can be from a supplement. So beyond that, what I'm going to talk about is how to make a vegan diet healthy from a macrobiotic point of view, using Oriental medicine principles. So I'm going to run through a number of points. Point one is, don't eat a load of processed vegan foods, eat whole foods, because whole foods are high energy foods. So this means eating whole grains, whole beans, a good range of good quality vegetables, seeds, nuts, fruits, etc. I think I see quite a lot of people who want to eat a vegan diet, and but go for a lot of kind of substitute foods, vegan cheese, vegan bacon, etc. These foods are highly processed, and I think one of the reasons why in the last 40, 50 years, maybe 60 years, the more modern world has suffered from a lot of degenerative disease. It's not only the kinds of food which they're eating, it's also eating a lot of processed foods. Our bodies have evolved over millions of years to digest and assimilate and use whole foods because that's all that was available. The trouble with processed foods, vegan cheese, I've tried vegan cheese, can be pretty tasty. Nothing wrong with eating it, occasionally, but I wouldn't want to eat it regularly because that fatty nature, still, it's a lot of fat in a concentrated form. That's not something that you would find in nature. You would find fats in seeds and nuts, a little bit with grains and beans and other foods, and you might use some vegetable oil. But eating that concentrated fat isn't necessarily, on a regular basis, it wouldn't be so good for the body. So also processed foods have had the life kicked out of them generally, because from an Oriental point of view, we're not only getting nutrients from food, we're getting life energy from food. And here at the school, we have quite a big vegetable garden. And as some of you may have experienced, it is just an amazing thing to pick fresh vegetables from fresh greens or beans or beetroot or whatever it is, and bring it into your kitchen and eat it, and you get so much life energy from that food. So from good quality foods, from whole foods, we get a lot of life energy. When foods are processed, they go through a lot of machines. They're pulverized and separated and pounded and shot through tubes, and that drives a lot of the life key out of those foods. So energetically, they become more like dead foods. One of the things I experience when I sometimes eat out and eat something like that is I notice, I eat my energy is maybe a little bit low, I'm feeling hungry, I eat the food, and there's no pickup in my energy. When I cook or when I eat more well-prepared whole foods, my energy is getting a bit low. I eat and my energy picks up. It's like within minutes, within half an hour, my energy levels have really increased. When we eat a lot of dead foods, we don't get that. Then it's tempting to eat more energy stimulating foods, either high salt foods, high sugar foods, or high fat foods, including a lot of sweet foods and also stimulants like coffee, matcha, etc. Because we're not getting energy from our foods, so we're looking around. Oh, I need some. I need some chocolate. I need some vegan cake. I need something sweet. I need some tropical fruits. Because they contain a lot of sugar. Etc. Or something fatty to get an energy kick. Whereas if then our meals and good quality snacks are giving us that life energy, and then we're not needing those stimulants so much. So this means quite a change in eating habits. As many people are doing these days, it means learning how to cook, particularly whole grains, brown rice, millet, quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, etc., etc., rye, barley, and maybe a little flour products, a little pasta, little noodles, some good quality sourdough bread, but particularly grains in their whole form still contain a lot of life energy and ki. Then we can cook beans, maybe use some lightly processed beans, such as tofu or tempeh, as a higher source of proteins. Hummus, bean pates, etc. A good range of vegetables, roots, round and greens, because they contain different nutrients and give us different qualities. Definitely we need some seeds in our diet for natural oils, a few nuts, Not too many nuts. Nuts are fairly difficult for the body to digest and assimilate. Seeds are easier. Sea vegetables are a really great addition because they're so mineral rich. If one's eating meat, then you're eating. Now, animals have very concentrated minerals in them. That's why we need to eat a lot of minerals. And I see a lot of people eating a vegan diet who've become really depleted in minerals, which I'm going to say a bit more about later on. But one way of getting enough minerals is by eating whole foods and whole vegetables, and a good range of different vegetables. Obviously, if you can get organic or some really good local veg, or grow your own, is undoubtedly the best. Then they can be tastier and higher in nutrients. Sea vegetables are great because they contain a lot more minerals than any land vegetables, so they're a great way of upping our mineral intake. Yeah. So let's cook whole foods. That means learning how to cook them in really delicious ways. It's getting away from the idea of, well, I liked pizza, so now I'm going to have a vegan pizza. I used to like bacon, so now I'm going to have vegan bacon, etc. Learn how to cook fantastic, tasty, colourful, amazing looking dishes with grains and beans and whole different vegetables and different seasonings and so on, to make food which is you're really going to enjoy and really sustain your health. The reason we have a great cooking school here is so that people can come and learn to cook, and because it's no good just changing your diet, you've got to make that food really tasty and healthy and balanced for it to have to really work long term. And we also check out our online courses. We have online cooking courses as well. Next series, well, we run series showing how to make a whole meal, which you can then make at home. Colourful, really delicious meals. So got to learn good cooking skills. So that's my first principle. Primarily eat whole foods. It takes more cooking, but cooking is a fun, enjoyable thing, and actually really important for our health. We just get more life energy and more nutrients, I believe, from home cooking than we do from processed and pre-made foods. Fine to eat out sometimes, have a takeaway, whatever. But primarily, if we're cooking our own food, we're going to get more life energy and better health from it. Then, I'll just show you the latest. Very interesting that the latest NHS dietary recommendations. I've been watching what the NHS and what the medical establishment in the UK have been suggesting since about the mid-1980s. Well, you had to have a lot of meat, big dairy section, have to eat dairy for your health. Sugar was included. Yes, sugar is important for your health. This latest version came out in 2016 and really healthier. So it's saying eat 1/3 complex carbohydrates from whole grains, primarily, maybe some starchy vegetables. Very good. 1/3 vegetables and a bit of fruit. Very good. Then this is the kind of higher protein section. Grains and vegetables aren't going to give you everything you need. You need to make sure you're eating some foods higher in protein. So this used to be the meat section. Now it says eat more beans and pulses, plus some sustainably sourced fish, and less red and processed meat. So they're recognizing that actually this protein section can be made up of vegetarian or vegan protein, beans and various derivatives. So that's great. And then this fourth section, the blue section, this used to be the dairy section, and it used to be twice the size because unbelievably Western nutrition and science and medicine was saying dairy foods are absolutely necessary for health, and we need to be eating them every day. It's now shown by many people's example in the West that we don't need to eat dairy foods every day, just as actually eating dairy foods on a regular basis is a minority pursuit in the world. Many areas of the Far East aren't eating dairy foods on a regular basis. Don't eat dairy foods. So here they've got dairy or alternatives. If you're wanting some milky things, then there are plant milks, etc. that one can use. And then this final very thin section, purple section, is for good quality plant oils. It's actually got a picture, I think, of a bottle of oil and then a margarine tub. I would avoid all margarines and all this stuff that comes in tubs. It's all been processed. It's gone through a variety of different processes. It's lost a lot of life energy. So why use it? Use some good quality vegetable oils, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about oils later on in a vegan diet. So wow, NHS, reflecting current, the kind of current Western nutritional theory is saying a plant-based diet is the healthiest. The most you could get in here is like maybe a fifth of animal food, or you could make the whole thing vegan or near vegan. So macrobiotics, this is what macrobiotics has been suggesting for the last 40, 50, 60 years. So very interesting. So really quite supportive of absolutely supportive of a plant-based diet, and supportive of a more vegan way of eating. Very interesting. So that's my first principle: eat whole foods. Second principle is to eat in a balanced way. And if you're going to eat balanced, then you have to ask yourself, well, what factor are you balancing? Are you balancing acid and alkaline? Are you temperature, heating and cooling foods, or what? So in macrobiotics, we look at foods in terms of their energetic qualities, which we describe as yin and yang. Here I've divided foods into 5 categories. Up this end, we have yang foods: salt, eggs, meat, poultry, and cheese. These are very solid, concentrated foods with a lot of protein and often fats in as well. These foods generally create more heat and energy in the body, but also most of them, apart from salt, tend to come with a fair amount of animal fat, and which can create problems. To a lesser extent, fish, shellfish, seafood, and then more mildly salty seasonings, such as herb salt, shoyu or tamari soy sauce, miso, have a milder effect, less fatty, less concentrated, but still have a more warming, energizing effect. They bring more energy into the body. More balanced are the whole foods, all the different whole parts of plants: grains, beans, seeds, nuts, vegetables, fruits, seed vegetables. So these have, these whole plant foods are more balanced. Some are more energizing, some are more relaxing, some are a bit heating, some are a bit cooling. So making one's diet up mostly of these more balanced whole plant foods is the way to create that internal balance in the body. Then we go more onto the yin side. So yin foods, in the macrobiotic way of looking at it, is foods which bring our energy more. Yang foods take energy into the body, take energy and heat into the body. Yin foods bring energy more outwards. They make us more expressive. They bring our emotions out more. They relax the body. If we overdo them, they really cool down the body and devitalize the body. They make us tired or exhausted. So the milder ones, tropical fruits, oranges, pineapples, mangoes, etc. all very delicious because nice flavors, contain more fruit sugars. So don't want to eat much of those. Much better to eat more temperate climate fruits if you're living in a temperate climate. Um, living in Northern Europe, North America, better to eat apples, pears, strawberries, blueberries, etc., rather than pineapples, bananas. Sorry, folks. Yeah, bananas are not such a great food to be eating on a regular basis. High in fruit sugars, and also can be somewhat mucus forming for some people. Herbs, fine to use a bit of herbs, some vegetable oil, a bit of fruit juices, but we don't want to overdo them. A little bit of grain-based alcohol, such as beers, maybe some sake or whiskey, herb teas, those kind of things. A little more expansive, a little more relaxing. And then we go up the much more strong yin end, where we have a lot of the stimulants, sugar, also honey, which is 85% simple sugars, alcohol made more from fruits like wine, spices. I think when we eat spices, we can really feel how they bring a lot of heat to the surface of the body. They're not heating us deeply. They bring the heat outwards. Afterwards, they're cooling. That's why people in hot countries eat spices, and people in cold countries don't want to eat a lot of spices. People in hot countries, because the end result is that it cools your body down. Also, stimulants like caffeine from tea and coffee. Also, recreational drugs, very strong yin effect, taking energy out of the body. It can be very stimulating, can be pretty heart-opening, can be hallucinatory, but as has become really evident that using recreational drugs on a regular basis, people often get really weakened and become spaced out, lose their direction in life, more suffering, more anxiety, fear, etc. So the kind of traditional British, modern diet has been to eat a fair amount, since the Second World War. Before the Second World War, people were poorer. They ate much more of a plant-based diet. Also, there was less food traveling around the world, so people were eating more local foods. So they weren't able to eat a lot of tropical fruits and cacao and so on. But particularly in the last 50, 60 years, people have increased the amount of eggs, meat, poultry, cheese, these animal foods. And then when we eat these, of course, they heat up the body, they create more tension. If we overeat them, they create more tension in the body. And then, of course, we want some of this. We eat some meat. We want a nice sugary dessert afterwards. We want to drink some alcohol with it. And maybe we want to have some coffee afterwards, or some cake, or something like that. So people have been, so typical, what was a typical Western diet, bouncing between these extremes, very destructive for the health, creating a lot of different health problems. So my second principle is to create a balance inside the body by primarily eating 80–90% this central category of foods, the whole plant foods, with a little bit of these more yin foods and these more yang foods, and very little of the strong yin and the strong yang foods. This is going to create a good internal balance, which is really going to create health. This is one of the main principles of healing a whole variety of different health problems in macrobiotics. If people have eaten a lot of yang foods, they tend to develop more yang problems, a lot of deep tension in the body, a lot of body stiffness, maybe heavy painful periods, maybe the menstrual cycle becoming shorter and the periods coming more frequently, more headaches, migraines, gallstones, stomach getting very, very tense and affecting appetite and digestive problems, osteoarthritis, etc., etc. So if people are suffering from problems from overeating these, number one, eat a balanced diet and eat a little bit of the more yin foods to bring their body condition into balance. And this is how we can heal a lot of yang caused health problems. On the other hand, if people have eaten a lot of these yin foods, a lot of sugar and honey and um, caffeine and alcohol and things like that, that is going to be weakening for the body. It weakens tissues, creates inflammation in the body, and then people may be getting problems like hay fever, asthma, airborne allergies, food allergies, irritable bowel, digestive problems, a lot of skin problems, eczema, and so on. And again, the healing of that is to cut out these foods, eat a more balanced diet, and maybe just tend it a little bit more on the yang side. And it's amazing, I've just been amazed in the last 40 years how simple this principle is, but how many health problems you can heal just with this simple principle. So coming back to thinking about vegans, what sometimes happens is that vegans are basically giving up the eggs, meat, poultry, cheese, the fish, and so on. Often they get into eating a bit more grains and beans and veg and so on. But they often go on eating a fair amount of maybe tropical fruits, maybe dates and figs, and sugar and honey and cakes and biscuits and chocolate and cacao and coffee and things like that. And what happens to quite a bit of people. I'm not saying everyone on the vegan diet, but what I see in my consultations, quite a few people on the vegan diet start suffering from problems caused by an excess of these foods. Developing more allergies, especially developing more tiredness and a lack of energy, maybe muscle weakness, and maybe craving meat. Some vegans, I've seen start craving meat because they're missing out. Actually, in some ways, they don't need meat. What they need is something yang, and their body's telling them, you can get this yang quality from meat, so go eat a piece of meat. And of course, that's very, emotionally, psychologically, it's very confusing to crave and want to eat meat. I know some that do eat meat, and they feel much better afterwards. They feel like a rush of energy in the body, and sometimes other symptoms clear up. But actually, on a vegan diet, if you're not eating the sugar, the honey, the cacao to any great extent, actually cacao is not so bad. It's the fact that it practically always comes with some kind of concentrated sugar. Coffee, tropical fruits, lots of fruit juices, smoothies. Everybody thought the smoothies were so great. Vegetable juices, great, but smoothies with a lot of tropical fruits and bananas and stuff in, definitely not healthy. Too far up this end. So if on a vegan diet, one is eating mostly this central range of foods, a little bit of these more salty seasonings, a little bit of the herbs and vegetable oils, etc., and you're in balance, then you're much less likely to get those meat cravings. You're much less likely to develop health problems caused by that excess. So that's a very kind of quick, simple explanation of how to eat more balanced. But I think it's a really, really important one for vegans, because what I see is so often they continue eating a lot of dates and a lot of sweet food, and then they wonder why they're starting to get a variety of health problems. I'm just going to show you another nice illustration, which maybe makes that a little bit clearer, just looking at different kinds of vegetables. So within that central section, some foods are more warming and more energizing, particularly whole grains, beans if we cook them a long time, and root vegetables, whereas other foods are a little bit more relaxing and cooling, such as more green vegetables and fruits. So one of the things I always liked about the macrobiotic approach is it's very common sense. Here are some root vegetables. They have a lot of downward energy. They're growing downwards, so that energy is coming down. So if we eat them, then the energy in our body goes down, and it strengthens our lower organs, it strengthens our kidneys, reproductive organs, etc., nourishes our sexual energy. And they're firm and compact, and that's how they make our body firm and compact and strong. If we eat more, where are we? More green vegetables, lettuces, spring greens, cabbages, etc. These have a much more expansive energy. These have a more opening, more cooling effect on the body, a more relaxing effect on the body, which we also need. So this is why it's good to eat some root vegetables, some round vegetables, which are intermediate, and some green vegetables every day, because we're getting different nutrients and also these different energies. If we just eat a lot of green vegetables, our energy is coming up in the body. We may start feeling ungrounded. Our heads get too busy. We stop lacking. We start becoming weak in our lower body. Our grounding goes. If we want to be more grounded, eat more root vegetables, because these are taking our energy down, strengthening the energy in our abdomen and legs, and helping ground us. So I hope that gives a bit more of a kind of feel for the kind of yin-yang way of understanding things. So second principle, eat in a more yin-yang balanced way. Third principle, let's eat foods primarily from our own climate. So if we are living in Northern Europe, we eat primarily Northern European foods. If we're living in the Mediterranean, we eat primarily Mediterranean foods. If we're living in Africa, we eat primarily foods which grow in Africa. This very much fits the yin-yang model. Foods which grow further north are generally higher in sodium, and a sign of being more yang, and are more compact, and more warming for the body. Just what we need if we're living in further north. Whereas as we go further south, fruits and vegetables and foods tend to become larger, more expanded, more cooling. Just what we need in those kind of warmer temperatures. So to keep our health in balance, let's eat primarily foods which grow in our locality or within our climatic range. This would also be very good for reducing global warming, really reduce the need for a lot of food transport around the world. Transporting all these bananas and coffee and tropical foods around the world creates a lot of carbon. Then, fourthly, want to talk a bit about eating fermented foods. A lot of people around the world eating more plant-based diets have evolved a range of fermented foods, which can really be helpful for health. I think, and actually, most peoples around the world have for thousands of years have created some kind of fermented foods. If they have grains, they ferment grains. If they have milk, they ferment it to make yogurt. If they have vegetables, they ferment those. Dates, when I was in the Sudan years ago, dates were handy, so they'd ferment dates. So some fermented food, very helpful for digestion, and good to have two different kinds of fermented foods. So guess what? Some yang ones and some yin ones. So coming back to that chart, up the yang end, we have in the Far East, they have evolved a few really excellent, more yang fermented foods. Miso, which is a dark brown, well, not always a dark brown, but a kind of brown paste made from fermenting soybeans with sea salt and sometimes a grain like rice or barley, and traditionally aged for at least a year. And the soybeans break down. It's very rich in amino acids, adds a lot of flavor to foods, to soups, to sauces, etc. And also contain a lot of minerals, and these really have a strengthening effect. Very, very good for strengthening the digestion, strengthening the blood, you could say, and strengthening the whole body. So very good to have some of these more yang fermented foods on a regular basis. In macrobiotics, quite a lot of people pick up the Oriental tradition of having soup for breakfast, which might seem very strange to us in the West, used to either a fry-up or breakfast cereals. Breakfast cereals, sugared breakfast cereals with cow's milk is really one of the worst foods you can eat on a regular basis. They mostly contain a lot of sugar, plus milk, which is mucus forming. They are maybe quite stimulating and give you a bit of energy, but they cause so many problems in the body, especially the lungs. They hate that sugar and mucus combination. The intestines not so great, etc. So try having a soup for breakfast, and you can have some porridge and toast and other things as well. But soup is actually very energizing. A miso soup is actually very energizing. This is partly why they work so hard in the Far East, Korea, Japan, because they have a soup for breakfast. Then, on the other hand, really good to have some more yin fermented foods, especially fermented vegetables. Some people are keen on yogurt and fermented kombucha, fermented, which is you feed it on sugar and tea, and it's a fungus. Some people do well on that, other people not, because of the sugar content. Some people with yogurt, okay, there's lots of lactobacilli in there, but there's also a certain amount of milk fats, probably a bit of lactose left, which isn't so great for the health. So really the best is to have vegetable pickles, very traditional in Europe, sauerkraut and other pickled vegetables, not only for health, but also because guess what, 100 years ago, probably less than 100 years ago, vegetables only grew in season. Now, we're used to having vegetables all year round. How? Because for us in Northern Europe, an awful lot of them come from polytunnels in Spain and other southern countries. But originally, onions grew at a certain time of year, carrots, cucumbers, cabbages, etc. So people would pickle them so that they had some vegetables to eat over the winter, which is a pretty good principle. And then also along with these vegetable pickles, you're getting a lot of lactobacilli and very beneficial organisms, which are just great for the digestion. So really good to eat some more yang fermented foods and some more yin fermented food. The yang ones, add also some nice kind of salty, mineral-rich flavor to food. The more yin vegetable ones add a nice sour, light, fresh quality to our food. So great additions from a taste point of view as well. Then I want to say a little bit about fats and oils. One of the advantages of eating a more vegan diet is you're not eating a lot of animal fats. Become well known since the 1980s that a high animal fat diet really contributes to heart disease, contributes to strokes, gallstones, and certain kind of cancers, colon cancer, liver cancer, etc. So by eating a vegan diet, then we're really reducing our chances of getting those kinds of problems. However, we can still eat too many fats on a vegan diet. We can also undereat fats. It's all about balance. We need to have some healthy fat and oil in our diet. Seeds are a great source. Great to eat. Maybe a minimum of a tablespoonful of sesame, pumpkin, sunflower seeds every day. Just in dishes, lightly roasted as a snack. It's good to use some good quality cold pressed vegetable oils, sesame, olive, sunflower, etc. And then we could use a little tahini, which is pulped sesame seeds. That can be nice as a spread if you're wanting a spread on bread or toast. And then we've got the nut butters: peanut butter, almond butter, hazelnut butter, etc. Reminds me of when I started macrobiotics back in 1980. I was into Whole Foods, so I'd been to my local Whole Foods shop in Brixton in South London, bought my big tub of peanut butter because I lived on peanut butter and cheese, and I got into macrobiotics in the summer. after going to some courses, and then learned that not only dairy foods but also peanut butter, if we eat a lot of nut butters, they're quite mucus forming and they can cause fat build-up in the body. Even though they're a plant source, we can eat too much plant fats. So I tried taking my big container of peanut butter back to the shop and they wouldn't have it. So I think, I can't remember if I gave it, I think I probably gave it away to someone. Also stopped the dairy. And very interesting, that autumn I just poured out mucus for about 4 months with a couple of short breaks. And apart from that, I was just pouring out so much mucus from my nose. All that time I was eating a lot of cheese, fat and mucus build up in my body, over several years. And then when I stopped, because if we keep eating a certain food, cheese, sugar, meat, whatever it is, our body gets kind of acclimatized to it and dulled to the effects of that food. And then when we stop that food, often then it starts coming out. We may think, well, what's happening? I'm eating a healthy diet. It's because your body has gone into discharge mode. It's saying, at last, instead of just having all this stuff crammed into me, at last I can start getting rid of some of it. So as a vegan, need to be aware of how much fats and oils you're eating. Nut butters for me are more occasional, kind of yummy, more slightly treat foods. Don't eat peanut butter every day in sandwiches and so on. I mean, fine to give to kids sometimes. They can get through more fats than us adults generally. Tahini is creates less fat in the body and less mucus, but one can even overdo that as well. So good to just use like a spread of some vegetable oils, some tahini, definitely seeds. Seeds are not mucus forming, so we're eating a good amount of seeds, etc. And then the last thing I wanted to say, so I think I'm up to about number 6 now, is learn to make some really tasty sugar-free desserts. Obviously dairy-free, but also sugar-free. Otherwise, your body condition is going to get shifted up this end, and it'll throw your body out of balance, and then you'll start developing various health problems as a result. So learn to make some really nice refined sugar or concentrated sugar-free desserts. It can be very simple things like poached pears, stewed apple, baked apples. You can take the core out of apples, stuff them with some raisins, a little bit of tahini, a few grains of salt, a little bit of maybe a little bit of barley malt, which is a much lower has a much lower level of sugar, refined, simple sugars in, and bake them in the oven. You can use things like a little oat cream or soy cream to put on top if you're wanting something a bit dairy-like. You can make very nice fruit crumbles. They don't have to have tons of sugar in. You can use sweet fruits in the topping. Again, you can use something like barley malt, or sometimes it's called malt extract. Also concentrated apple juice we can use a certain amount of. We can make fruit jellies using agar and some fresh or some diluted apple concentrate, apple juice, and some nice fruits. Make great fruit jellies. Kids tend to love those. All kinds of different desserts. If you check our website, there's recipes for some really amazing looking desserts. You can make toffee cheesecakes and all kinds of nice things. Tiramisu, a healthier version of tiramisu. Of course, if you eat 6 pieces of it, it probably will be too much, but you can make tiramisu that, unless you have some kind of health condition which is right up the yin end, fine to enjoy some tiramisu. So learn to make some really good so that you're not tempted by a lot of the strong yin ones, high in refined sugar. So I'm talking about white sugar, brown sugar, muscovado sugar, they're all pretty much sugar, with some of them with a bit of colouring in. Molasses, even what are considered to be healthier sweeteners, agave syrup, macrobiotics we tend to use, maple syrup. In macrobiotics we tend to use a little rice syrup or barley malt, but we can even overuse them because they've all got simple sugars in. So having a little bit here and there, making a nice dessert or some nice biscuits or cookies or something sometimes is fine. But we really don't want to be eating those sweeteners in quantity every day. For me, I think a jar of barley malt lasts me about 4 to 6 weeks. If you're getting through half a jar a week, then, or even a whole jar, then that's going to throw your health out of balance. Okay, so those are I think 6 principles of how to make a vegan diet healthy. There are further resources on our website. There are some free information, leaflets, documents. I don't think there's one on this specific subject yet. There's one on how to give up dairy foods, how to substitute them with other foods, how to give up eating sugar, how to make great sweet foods without sugar. So do check those out. And if you look at the blogs, there are also some nice dessert recipes and other recipes on there as well. And you could also sign up for our weekly Macro Weekly, which has a recipe and some great information on by going onto our website. Okay, so I hope that's been a good use. I'm going to check out and see if there are some questions now to answer. So Farida, may you please consider low carb, higher protein vegan examples? In general, I don't think I don't suggest people go on low carb diets, high protein diets. For a number of reasons, partly from personal experience, that I see a lot of people trying a lot of different diets out these days, and I don't think the health results from low carb, high protein diets are so great. To start off with, they started off really as mostly as a way of losing weight, which can be effective for some people, but in the long term, people often, complex carbohydrates, whole grains, which people eat in most parts of the world, are really such a sustaining. And there's a lot of very false information around that somehow eating whole grains is the same as eating sugar. It's baloney. Eating sugar and eating whole grains has a completely different effect on the body. I've been eating whole grains 2 or 3 times a day for the last 40 years, and I feel great and have good energy levels, and very seldom get health problems. So it's really a bit of a fashion which I really don't recommend to people. I think whole grains, and if you're not filling up on whole grains, what are you going to fill up on? Often people are overeating higher protein foods. Gluten alternatives. Well, you just need to avoid the grains which are higher in gluten. So wheat, spelt, barley. It's fine to eat brown rice, fine to eat millet, fine to eat buckwheat, quinoa. So there's not containing gluten. Also, you might be interested to know that gluten intolerance or gluten allergy is curable, is healable. I've seen many people gradually over time from eating this more balanced diet heal their intestines. The primary problem is not gluten, it's the condition of the intestines. 30, 40 years ago, the food was more or less the same, and very few people had gluten allergies. Really, it's the eating a lot of processed foods and a lot of the strong yin foods I was describing before really weakens the lining of the intestines, so that gluten and other protein molecules can get into the body and set up symptoms and reactions. And this is also why it's not just gluten intolerance. It's food allergies have just rocketed. A year or so ago, I was teaching in Valencia in Spain, and we went into a vegetarian restaurant. And after every dish, there was this long line of symbols of, all the kind of different things which were in the dish, and which in some ways is a good thing, so that people can avoid the things which they have allergies or intolerances to. But actually, this is crazy. This is crazy. If we have strong, robust health, and we create a strong digestive system, we should be able to eat a wide range of plant-based, healthy foods and not suffer from intolerances and allergies, including gluten. So, really, this is possible to get out of having a gluten problem with gluten by healing the intestines. Sugar is one of the worst foods for destroying or really weakening the lining of the intestine and creating food allergies. But in the meantime, of course, you've got to avoid it, and then by eating those gluten-free grains. So you're also asking, recommend some resources for sattvic food, high-energy vegan recipes. So high-energy vegan recipes. So I think what I would say is, really you have to get out of the idea of high-energy foods. I know high-energy foods, it's tempting to think of high-energy foods, but if we think of high-energy foods, why are they high in energy? Usually because they contain a lot of refined carbohydrates, a lot of sugars, whether it's Lucozade and sports drinks, whether it's really sweet kind of nut and date balls. We should be getting away from the idea of high energy foods that are going to give you a sudden burst of energy. We need to replace that with the idea of slow foods, which give us a constant supply of energy, so that we have plenty of energy to go through the day and be active and do a lot of different things. And that comes, as I said at the beginning, from eating high quality whole foods, not eating much in the way of processed foods, and it comes from balancing our diet between yin and yang. Whole grains really give a lot of energy to us. They give strong, sustained energy over a long period of time. This is one reason for eating whole grains: brown rice, short grain brown rice, long grain brown rice, millet, wheat if you're okay with it, barley if you're okay with it, quinoa, buckwheat, etc. These give us long, sustained energy. Look at people around the world who eat, a fair amount of grains as part of a central part of their plant-based diet. Often very active, very physically active, with a lot of energy. Michelle, absolutely bang on, eating what grows close. Yeah, I think that's what we need to do. And actually, not quite so easy. Even within macrobiotics, if you look at the foods that we eat, it's very interesting to see where foods come from. So I did an exercise a little while ago to see actually what foods that I'm eating actually come from the UK. Some oats, some wheat, some barley. Rice comes from a bit further south, from France, Italy, Spain. Okay, that's not so far, but it's a bit further away. Where beans? Where do our beans come from? If you just go and buy beans from China or North America, there's a food company called Hodmedods in the East Country that are growing more native beans, field beans, broad beans, etc. So we can change the kind of beans that we're eating. Nuts, where do all our nuts come from? Almonds, an awful lot come from California. That's where they grow a lot of almonds. And by the way, don't buy almond milk and eat too much in the way of almonds, because the world now wants almond milk. Vast areas of California are growing almonds, and it's been very environmentally destructive. So if you want a plant milk, I would say use oat milk would be a much better one to use. Pretty easy to get local vegetables, but it means we need to be prepared to eat more seasonally with them. Fruits, lots of fruit here, but in the winter, what do we do in the winter? Actually, still possible to get apple, pears and berries. There are enormous warehouses full of refrigeration units where apples and pears, European, British, Belgian pears and apples go, so that we can be eating those over the winter now, which feels quite good. A lot of dried fruits, a lot of raisins, and definitely dates and so on. Tend to come from the south of Europe. Quite a lot come from Turkey. So actually, we've got a long way to go to grow more of our food locally, and I think that's definitely, hopefully, that's something that's going to really happen a lot in the next 20, 30 years. Chihiro, nice to have you here again. You tend to consume a lot of salt from miso, soy sauce, salt itself, etc. Are there alternatives? Well, one thing is you perhaps need to just use less of those salty seasonings. I know they can get quite addictive. Maybe you need to experiment with some other kinds of flavorings for your food. I know, for example, there are traditional Japanese seasonings, which I used to use quite a bit of. Mirin is like a sweet wine, very nice for a sweet taste, and rice vinegar. Of course, grated ginger and grated ginger juice is very nice. In Europe, personally, I don't use so much of, I use less of those Japanese ingredients. If I want sweetness in a dish, I tend to use a bit of concentrated apple juice because it's more local. So, for example, and also tend to use more balsamic vinegar, which has a lovely sour and sweet flavor, and it's made in Europe. So, for example, if I'm frying tempeh or making a tofu dish, I might add just a little bit of shoyu soy sauce, and then add some balsamic vinegar, and if I want a sweet taste, a little bit of concentrated apple juice, or I may grate some root ginger and add some ginger juice, and lots of flavor in that juice with very little salt. You may also want to get into using herbs, maybe a touch of spice sometimes, for some alternative flavors as well, mustard as well. Horseradish, radishes, daikon or mooli for a more hot flavor. Yeah, so yeah, why don't you explore some other seasonings? Okay, I see that's anybody else have any questions you'd like to ask about how to eat a vegan diet successfully, healthily, or any other health-related question? If you do, ask now, while there's still the chance. So no more coming through. Okay, so I'll end that for tonight. I hope that has been informative and useful of how to make a vegan diet healthy. I see a lot of people eating a vegan diet and eating pretty unhealthy diets. So if you're going to eat a vegan diet, why not make it healthy as well? And if you would find it helpful to, if you want to learn some more cooking skills, then check out our website for online and residential cooking classes, and also a whole range of other classes teaching the Oriental, more energetic approach to medicine and food and cooking. Okay, great. Thank you for joining me.